You know that feeling when you check your bank account and see $3,000 sitting there, and you think to yourself, okay, I'm doing pretty good, I've got some savings. But then your car needs new tires, your laptop dies, and suddenly you're back at $400. And you're like, why does this keep happening to me? Meanwhile, your friend who makes basically the same amount as you somehow has $30,000 saved up, and they're talking about investing in index funds and real estate like it's the easiest thing in the world. And you're sitting there thinking, what am I missing? Here's the thing. You're not crazy. There's actually a very specific mathematical and psychological threshold that happens around $25,000 that completely changes the game. And once you understand it, you'll realize why building wealth feels impossible before this point and why it suddenly feels inevitable after. My name is Sam, and I spend way too much time thinking about why financial freedom seems easy after you hit $25,000. If you're someone who dreams to be a millionaire, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Most personal finance advice is garbage. People tell you just save more or cut out the lattes, like that's the secret. But here's what most people don't realize. There's an actual measurable point where the entire psychology and mathematics of money completely flips, and that point is around $25,000. Now you might be thinking, Sam, that's a weirdly specific number. Why not $20,000? Why not $30,000? Great question. Let me explain. According to a study by the Federal Reserve in 2023, 37% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling something 37%. That's over 1 in 3 people who are literally one car repair away from going into debt. But here's where it gets really interesting. That same study showed that once people hit around $25,000 in liquid savings, their financial stress levels dropped by over 60%. Not 10%. Not 20%, 60%. Why? Because $25,000 represents something psychologically profound. It's the point where you stop playing defense and can finally start playing offense with your money. Think about it like this. When you have $2,000 in your account, every unexpected expense is a crisis. Your brain is constantly in fight or flight mode. You're not thinking about investing or building wealth. You're thinking about survival. Your entire financial strategy is just hoping nothing breaks, but $25,000, that's 6 months of expenses for most people. That's true emergency fund territory. That means when your car needs $1,200 in repairs, you're annoyed, but you're not panicking. You're not putting it on a credit card at 22% interest. You're not borrowing from family. You just handle it. Now here's the mathematical part that nobody talks about. Let's say you've got $25,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account earning 4.5% interest. That's $1,125 per year. That's $93.75 per month. Doesn't sound like much, right? But wait, let's say you invest that $25,000 in an S&P 500 index fund instead. Historical average return is about 10% annually. That's $2,500 in the first year just from returns. That's $208 per month that you didn't have to work for. Now compare that to when you had $2,000 saved. At 10% returns, that's $200 for the entire year. $16 a month. Nobody's getting excited about $16 a month, but $208 per month? That's a car payment. That's groceries. That's real money that's starting to work for you while you sleep. This is where people's brains start to shift. They start to see money differently. It's not just something you trade hours for anymore. It becomes something that can multiply itself. Here's what most people don't realize about hitting $25,000. It's not just about the money, it's about what happens in your brain. Before you have substantial savings, you have what psychologists call a scarcity mindset. Every financial decision is made from a place of fear. Should I take this job that pays $5,000 more but requires a longer commute? Well, I can't afford for my car to break down, so no. Should I invest in learning a new skill that could boost my income? I can't afford to spend $500 on a course right now. You're constantly making decisions based on what you can't afford to lose, rather than what you could gain. But after $25,000, your brain literally rewires itself. You start making decisions from abundance instead of scarcity. That doesn't mean you become reckless. It means you can finally think strategically. A 2019 study from Princeton University found that financial stress actually reduces cognitive function by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. Think about that. When you're stressed about money, you're literally making dumber decisions. You can't think clearly about long-term strategy when you're in constant panic mode about short-term survival. Now you might be thinking, okay, Sam, this all sounds great, but I'm nowhere near $25,000. This is depressing, not motivating. Hold on, because this is where it gets really interesting. The hardest money you will ever save is your first $10,000. Period. I don't care if you make $40,000 a year or $400,000 a year. That first $10,000 is brutal because you're fighting against everything. You're fighting against emergencies. You're fighting against lifestyle creep. You're fighting against that voice in your head that says you deserve to treat yourself. But here's the thing about hitting $10,000, then $15,000, then $20,000. Each milestone gets easier, not harder. Easier. Why? Because you start to see the progress. You start to see that number grow faster. And most importantly, you start to change your identity. When you have $500 saved, you're someone trying to save money. When you have $15,000 saved, you're someone who is good with money. That identity shift is massive. Let me give you a real example. Let's say you make $50,000 a year after taxes, and you manage to save 15% of that. That's $7,500 per year, or $625 per month. Year 1. You end with $7,500, assuming you started from zero. Year 2. You have $15,000 plus about $750 in returns at 10% equals $16,250. Year 3. You have $23,750 plus $1,625 in returns equals $25,375. You hit $25,000 in 3 years. But watch what happens in years 4 and 5. Year 4, $25,375 plus $7,500 saved plus $2,537 in returns equals $35,412. Year 5, $35,412 plus $7,500 saved plus $3,541 in returns equals $46,453. You almost doubled your money from year 3 to year 5. You went from $25,000 to over $46,000 in just 2 years, saving the exact same amount each year. That's the snowball effect. That's why wealthy people say the first million is the hardest. Because it is. Once you have momentum, once you have that base, the math starts working in your favor instead of against you. Here's another thing that changes after $25,000 that nobody talks about. Opportunities start appearing that literally weren't available to you before. Look, when you have $2,000 in savings, you can't take advantage of opportunities. Your friend starts a business and needs a partner, can't do it. Real estate market crashes and houses are 30% off, can't do it. Your company offers a program where you can take a 3-month sabbatical to learn a new skill, can't do it. You need that paycheck. But with $25,000, suddenly you have options. You have what I call opportunity capital. Let me tell you a story. I know a guy, let's call him Marcus, who spent 5 years saving up $30,000 while working as a teacher making $45,000 a year. Everyone thought he was crazy. He drove an old car, he had roommates in his 30s, he brought lunch to school every day. Then in 2020, when the market crashed, he took $20,000 of that and bought index funds while everyone else was panicking. That $20,000 is worth over $45,000 now, just 4 years later. He didn't have some special knowledge. He didn't time the market perfectly. He just had capital available when opportunity knocked. But here's the thing. Opportunity knocked for everyone. The market crashed for everyone. But 90% of people couldn't answer the door because they didn't have any money available to invest. They were living paycheck to paycheck. This is what I mean about $25,000 changing the game. It's not just about security, it's about positioning yourself to take advantage of the inevitable opportunities that will come your way. Now let's talk about something crucial, debt. If you have high interest debt, this $25,000 threshold works differently, but it's just as important. Here's what I see all the time. Someone has $8,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest, and they've got $2,000 saved. They're paying $300 a month toward the debt, but $147 of that is just interest. They're barely making progress, and every month feels like running on a treadmill. That's why it's so important to have savings. If you want a part 2 on how to save your first $25,000, give this video 1,000 likes and I'll drop it soon. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, drop a comment below, and let me know what your current savings goal is.